In 2007, Mark Thompson thought he had it all figured out. At 32, he was a manager at a regional logistics company right here in Ohio. He had a steady salary, a modest home in the suburbs, and a plan for the future. Sure, there were bills, but he had stability. And in his mind, stability was the same as security. He was about to learn a very hard lesson. Then, the economic downturn hit. One morning, Mark received an email with a single word in the subject line, urgent. It wasn't a warning, it was a termination notice. He just stared at the screen, completely numb. The company was downsizing, and his position was gone. There was no negotiation, no severance package, just a polite thank you for your service. Mark walked out of that office feeling a strange, hollow emptiness. For the first time, he realized that the financial security he had built his life on could vanish in an instant. The months that followed were a downward spiral. Mark sent out what felt like hundreds of applications. He went to interviews, but with so many people looking for work and so few opportunities, every door seemed to shut in his face. It wasn't long before he fell behind on his mortgage. Then his car broke down, and the bills started piling up like dark shadows in the corner of his room. Eventually, the unthinkable happened. Mark had to sell his house. He packed a few belongings and moved into a homeless shelter. His new reality was sleeping on a cot in a crowded room, washing up in a communal bathroom, and fighting every day to hold onto his dignity. During the day, he'd wander the city, looking for work, sending resumes from the public library, and just praying for a break. Every rejection felt like a physical blow, cutting deeper than the last. Friends and relatives offered sympathy, but nobody could offer him a real lifeline, a shortcut back to the life he once knew. Mark was at rock bottom. He had to rebuild his entire life from scratch. Life in the shelter was a humbling experience. Mark learned to survive on almost nothing. He waited in line at soup kitchens for a warm meal, his stomach aching with hunger and his heart with shame. He carried his entire life in a single backpack, a notebook, a beat-up old laptop, and a couple of changes of clothes. But even in his darkest moments, Mark refused to let despair win. He refused to let this be the end of his story. He finally found a job washing dishes at a local diner. It was minimum wage, the hours were long, and his hands were constantly blistered. There was no recognition, no path for advancement. But every single day, as he scrubbed pots and pans, he repeated a mantra to himself: "This is temporary. I'm learning. I'm growing." It was a small victory, but it was his. In the evenings, after his exhausting shifts, he didn't rest. He went straight to the public library, opened his old laptop, and started to study. He read everything he could find about business, finance, and entrepreneurship. He knew he couldn't wait for someone else to save him. He had to create his own way out. Then came the turning point. It was a cold December morning, and Mark was walking to his dishwashing job. He noticed a small local business with a chaotic-looking warehouse. Boxes were stacked everywhere, delivery vans were waiting, and the owner looked like he was about to tear his hair out from stress. An idea sparked in Mark's mind. He approached the owner cautiously. "I'm sorry to bother you," Mark said, "but I've worked in logistics for years. I could help you organize your inventory. No charge. Just let me show you what I can do." The owner was skeptical at first, but seeing the desperation in his own situation, he eventually nodded. So, after his shifts at the diner, Mark went to the warehouse. He worked late into the night, reorganizing shelves, creating a labeling system, and streamlining the entire workflow. Within a week, the difference was incredible. The business was running smoothly, deliveries were finally on time, and the owner was beyond impressed. He was grateful, and grateful people talk. Word started to spread. Soon, other small business owners were asking for Mark's help. He didn't have a website or business cards. He didn't make grand promises. He simply showed up and solved their problems. By 2010, just a couple of years later, Mark had enough freelance consulting clients to quit his dishwashing job for good. He was still incredibly cautious with his money, but he managed to rent a small desk in a shared office space. He called his new venture Thompson Solutions. His first hires were friends he had met at the shelter, good people with valuable skills who just needed a chance. Together, they worked tirelessly. They helped small businesses optimize their operations, save money, and finally start to grow. Mark's reputation grew. Slowly but steadily, clients trusted him. Why? Because he had been where they all feared to go, the very edge of failure. He didn't just understand logistics and spreadsheets. He understood struggle. He understood what it felt like to lie awake at night, worried about losing everything. By 2015, Thompson Solutions had grown into a company with 30 employees, serving businesses all across Ohio. His team was made up almost entirely of people who had faced their own hardships, people who needed a second chance. Mark started getting invited to speak at local business events. But when he got on stage, he didn't talk about revenue charts or profit margins. He talked about resilience. He talked about humility. And he talked about perseverance. He often told the audience, "Success is not measured by what you have when life is easy. It is measured by how you rise when life pushes you all the way to the ground." Mark never forgot the shelter. He never forgot the people who showed him kindness when he had nothing. He started his own foundation to support homeless individuals, helping them get job training and find their own footing. He mentored countless young entrepreneurs, teaching them that failure, in the end, it's not a final destination, but a necessary stop on the journey to success. By 2020, Mark's company had grown to over 150 employees. He had a home again, he had financial stability. But more importantly, he had found a renewed sense of purpose that was more valuable than any bank account. Mark's story teaches us so many powerful lessons. First, that failure is never the end. In fact, it's often the real beginning of your true journey. Second, that small steps matter. That dishwashing job didn't just pay for a meal. It taught Mark discipline, patience, and resilience. Third, helping others is how you build true credibility. Real connections and trust will open doors that money never can. Fourth, consistency will always beat luck. It was the daily effort, compounded over years, that created his results. And finally, your past does not define your future. Everyone can start over, no matter how far they have fallen. So, if you're out there right now feeling stuck, or rejected, or invisible, remember Mark's journey. The world might seem harsh, and life can feel unfair. But your next opportunity could be just one small, brave step away. Even when it feels like you've lost everything, remember this: your ability to get back up, to rise again, is the most valuable asset you will ever own. Thank you so much for watching. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that inspires and empowers. See you in the next video.